All right, in our last video in this series, we're going to talk about wireframing and prototyping and how this is going to be beneficial, especially when we're working with clients and also for ourselves for eliminating scope creep. And we'll talk about more about what is scope creep and towards the end of this video. But wireframing is going to really help us with helping us understand what exactly we're going to be coding out in our user interface. So here's a video that is going to introduce us to the difference between prototyping and wireframing. And this is put out by the Nielsen Norman Group, which is a major UX research consultant firm, and they do work internationally. But go ahead and take a look at this video, pause this video, and then watch the video that you see here, and then we'll continue on. All right, so hopefully you had a chance to watch that video that went over some things related to what is wireframing and what is prototyping. I like to use some terms. So the terms prototyping and wireframe in the industry is used interchangeably. And so, but like I said, different companies kind of use different terminology for prototyping and what is wireframing versus what is a sketch and so forth. But just know that those terms could be used interchangeably depending on what company you work for, or whatever you're doing, whatever industry that you're in. Here's a working definition for what is wireframing. It's two-dimensional illustration that focuses on the page's interface. The key words here is space allocation, prioritization of content, right? The available functionalities within the application, and then also you can illustrate some level of intended behavior when you're doing wireframing or when you're illustrating the interface for your application. So again, a good wireframe is going to you're going to really focus on this idea of space allocation when you're putting the various components. You're going to prioritize the content. It's going to help you understand what can you put on that interface and how much space is available for it. And also the available functionalities is going to be sign in, log in functionality, a newsletter sign up area. But what are the functionalities in the application? And then also what are the intended behaviors that the end user can navigate to or perform on the interface. Here's some of the benefits of wireframing: visualization, error prevention, experimentation, prioritizing content, and then information architecture clarity, right? So with visualization, you're going to really get a good idea. So once you actually give that wireframe to the client, they should have a good idea of what their website is going to look like. And typically you have them sign off on it before you actually go into the coding of the web page. And I like to do that myself when I'm working with different clients, is that it's helped prevent scope creep. And scope creep is this idea where you may be working on a project, the client, you'll work on it, you'll code it out, and you'll present it to the client, and the client is like, whoa, I wish I was thinking about this, not necessarily that, but that actually extends the project. And that's where the creep comes in terms of how long the project takes to finish. And so scope creep extends the project way beyond the agreed upon desired time for that application to be completed. And so wireframing helps prevent some of those things, right? It also helps prevent errors. It helps you catch issues or mistakes that you didn't intend for when you're working for a particular client. Experimentation. You can have multiple wireframes. You can present multiple interfaces because they're just mock-ups. They're just interfaces that you're presenting to the client, and they can say, yes, let's modify this, let's take away this, I like this one better than the other, right? So you can experiment with the interface without actually spending a lot of time coding it out before coding it out. Prioritization determines how much space lets the end user know how much space they have, well, not the end user but the client, how much space they have to work with on any given page in your website. And then the information, the IA clarity, what's going to be the content or the structure of the content in your website, what's going to be prioritized and what's not going to be prioritized. Here's a link that kind of discusses more about wireframing. This is from a site called usability.gov. So once you click on this link, it's going to take you to a site that looks like this here. And it goes into more details about wireframing. And you'll see a good portion of the information that I have on my slide deck comes from usability.gov, which is a government website. And what I want to talk about next is this idea of low fidelity wireframes versus high fidelity wireframes. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do for your assignment is something called a high fidelity wireframe. And how does that differ from a low fidelity wireframe? So let's talk about that in just a second here. But before we talk about that, let me just say a few things here. Again, people may use these terms interchangeably. They may call a prototype a wireframe. Some people may call a wireframe a prototype. Some people may call it a sketch, right? But this here just shows you that many different organizations or companies have different processes that they may take before they actually code out the site. So some may sketch, they may do a wireframe, they may do a visual, and they may code it out, right? Here, somebody may do a wireframe, they may go into a high fidelity wireframe. They'll prototype it or visualize it, and then they'll code it out. Some people just have a shorter process where they'll just sketch it out, they go straight to coding, right? And like I said, different processes for different companies. So there's no one prescribed way, but more so there could be many different processes that companies take to code out, to get to the coding phase of their application. All right, so high fidelity versus low fidelity. Let's say a few words about the difference between the two. All right, so with low fidelity, the general idea is it's quick to develop. And so you'll see I have that bolded here. It's quick iteration. You could do, honestly, a low fidelity on a napkin, right, on a piece of paper. Some people may even consider that a sketch, but a low fidelity, it really is going to focus on space allocation, but also focus on the general layout. It's going to give the client an idea of how their application is going to be structured. High fidelity, you're being very particular about very much expressing all of the detail within the application. And so, for instance, I'm going to show you my application that I'm going to be coding out here. That's one for MPLS renters, and more specifically, it's going to be a page focused on a page for the agent, so they can actually see all the different prospective renters. But it's very detailed, right? When you see the end the end page, the end version of this site, or when I'm finished this particular page, it'll look very much like what you see here. And you'll see me go through the process of coding this out in the upcoming videos. So I'll code out the footer, I'll code out this section, but a high fidelity wireframe is precise, it's detailed. The end user knows exactly how everything is going to be structured out and how it's going to look once it's coded. So that's high fidelity. So here's some slides that kind of get at low fidelity versus high fidelity. So low fidelity is kind of, like I said, general. You may have some lorem ipsum, which is this gibberish text here. You may not have the images in there, but more so you may have this thing called placeholders. A really good tool that I like to use for placeholders is a tool called placeholder.com. And so you may not have all the graphics. Like I said, when you're doing low fidelity, you're at the very beginning stages of kind of visualizing what the application will look like. But placeholder is a cool tool where you can actually kind of grab some placeholder images and you can put them inside of your HTML to just to hold the place, right? So it's indicative of its name that it's actually a truly a placeholder when you don't have the graphic. And like I said, the graphic designer may be, I didn't say this, but the graphic designer may be doing some of the graphics for you, and it may take longer than expected. And so you can reserve the space with a placeholder. So this is an example of a low fidelity, right? Let's jump over to what a high fidelity wireframe would look like. And so if we look at this site here, this would be a high fidelity, an example of a high fidelity. So we just basically just flushed out the details. We added all the graphics, we added the actual text in. Again, we're looking at the space between the various components within this interface. We even add in color, right? So you're thinking through the end design of your application. Again, for your assignment 2, you're going to be doing some high fidelity wireframes, and we're going to be using a tool called Adobe XD. Give me 1 second here. Let me refresh. I think I'm missing one slide. Okay, yep, here we go. So like I said, this is the high fidelity. We're going to be using a tool called Adobe XD. And this tool here was released about a few years ago, but it's really a nice tool that the learning curve is not that steep, but you should be able to download this for free. So if you go to Adobe, and if you just Google Adobe XD, it'll take you to the first 2 links here. One is an ad for Adobe XD. You can click on that one. It'll take some money away from Adobe, but that's fine at this point. Or you could go ahead and go to the second link here and go ahead and download the application. You do have to create an account. to download Adobe XD, but it should be a free application at this current time of this, at the current recording of this video. It should be free. If you do have any issues, feel free to reach out to me, and I can help you get an installation of that on your machine. So download Adobe XD, and once that's downloaded, what I would like for you to do is take a look at these two videos. One is about 34 minutes long, but it really gets you acclimated to how to use the Adobe XD wireframing tool. This second video here is some shorter videos that go over some specific functionality, but both of these videos with no doubt will get you ready to use that tool and begin to craft your own wireframes. So go ahead and pause this video if you want and begin to watch these two videos. You may want to watch this video here first. The steps, there's about, I think there's 7 different steps. And then when you do have time later on, you may want to come back to how to get started with Adobe XD. But nonetheless, these two videos are really good videos that will at least get you up and going with Adobe XD. So go ahead and pause this video and watch at least this video here, and then you can come back and watch this video a little bit later after this recording. All right, so hopefully you had a chance to watch those videos at a minimum, watching this video series here. What I would like for you to do here is this is going to be our second lab to get some practice with using the Adobe XD tool. Now, before we actually jump into this here, let me just show you. I just showed you my example of Adobe XD where I have this wireframe for this particular artboard, and it's going to be the agent profile. And like I said, it's a fairly easy tool to use here. But like I said, this is the detail that I'm looking for not only your assignment 2, but also your lab 2. So be very precise, very detailed in terms of the exact look and feel of your site. All right. And like I said, we'll go over this when we're doing our synchronous session together. And so we'll talk more about how to craft some of the things you want to pay attention to when you're crafting out your interface. Here's the wireframe. Here's the lab that I'd like for you to walk through. So there's 3 different steps here. You're going to create a high fidelity wireframe with the Brookfield Zoo. So if you right click and click on this link here, it's going to take you to the Brookfield Zoo website, zoo that's located in Chicago. What I'd like for you to do is to basically wireframe only this home page, just to get some practice with the tool. Now, when you're wireframing this project here, you can use some of the resources that you see here. So if you want, you can use this graphic. So this banner here has a number of graphics. So if I inspect it, essentially it's a picture, right? So if I want to navigate to it, I can right click and open a new tab, and then there's the resource. I can right click and save that to my project folder and begin to use that graphic within my wireframe. I can also, there's a background image here for this header. So if I right click, so part of this here is also getting used to Google Chrome Inspect tools. So if I inspect here, I want to navigate to where that header is. Here's the header, but the header is found within the CSS. And so if I right click and open a new tab, here's the header, and I can save that image and download it to my project folder and begin to craft my wireframe. So yes, you can use the graphics found within this website when you're doing lab number 2. So if you want to use this logo, right, you would inspect, and notice that I'm actually clicking on the area that I want to grab the resource from. So here's the logo, and then here's the logo for the Brookfield Zoo. If I right click, open a new tab, I can go and grab that resource, right? So right click, save image as, and I can save it to my downloads folder. So let me just walk through a little bit of lab 2 here, just to kind of show you how to get started with doing a wireframe for lab 2 here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to open up Adobe XD. I'm just going to create a new project, and I'll just start with the desktop, the web version. So I'll just click on that. That's going to bring me up to this artboard here, right? So if I want to bring in that resource of that green background header, right? So I'm going to go to Brookfield Zoo website. So I'll save this image as, it's going to most likely save to, I'll save it to my downloads folder, and I'll just call this BG Zoo, and I'll save it. And I can import that graphic into Adobe XD. And so if I go here, I can say import by clicking these three modules, this 3D hamburger icon here, import. And what I want to import is go navigate to my downloads folder. Here's the BG. And here's the graphic I can use to craft my high fidelity wireframe. So I can stretch this out. And if you want to, there we go. Also, if you want to unclick this lock sign, that allow you to basically change the dimensions or morph the dimensions, right? And so I like the look and feel of that. I'll lock it back again. Again, that's this lock sign here that allows you to morph the dimensions of that graphic. I'll also bring in the image or the logo. So I'll save image as, and I'll have that saved to my downloads folder. So I'll say logo, and I'll hit save, and I'll import that in here to my graphic here. So I'll say import and logo. Like again, a high fidelity wireframe is going to really focus on information prioritization, the information allocation of the space. And so I want to make sure that I'm looking at, I'm referring back to this web page to really make sure I'm basically replicating this web page here. Here I have some navigation links, and I can illustrate that here in Adobe XD. So I can go here and I can begin to add text. So I can go here. The first text is going to be, what is it here? Plan your visit. And so I'll go back to my XD here and I'll just type in plan your visit. And I'm going to do my best to basically get this text to look exactly like what I see here in this site. So it's going to be this white text. It's going to be a little bit bolded here. And I'll just make sure I have it clicked on, and then here's the properties menu. I can change the text to white. So that's clicked on, and I can go over here in the fill. I can change that to white, and I want to make the text a little bit bolded, make it a stronger bold. So here, oops, I can say bold, and I'll just lift that up a little bit. So here's my select icon. So there's a number of different icons I can select within Adobe XD, and I can just move this text up a little bit more, and I can just do that. I can replicate this, so I can right click and duplicate this component, or copy it and paste it, or Control D as I think is duplicate. And so I can begin to work with my next navigation link. And you kind of get the idea, right? So you're going to add your own text, and you can pull the graphics from the Brookfield Zoo, and then you can add these graphics and then add your own text, but you want to get it to look exactly like what you see here. The last thing I want to show you here is that when you're doing your wireframing, there's this cool thing here. If you click on the outermost, the artboard here, and to get that blue outline, make sure you have that blue outline. What I like to use here is this grid layout, right? And this helps you kind of align your components accurately. So here, I was kind of just free flowing by adding these things here. But if I use this grid, let's say for instance, for my grid here, I want to use a kind of a, let's say a 4-column approach. So I can say 4, and then for my gutter width, I could just say, let's keep it at 16. I like the 16. But this here allows me to place my components in a such manner where I can actually place the components or the graphics or the resources onto in an organized way onto the grid. And so I can know that my navigation is going to span 3 columns. My logo is going to be here at the edge of the first column, and then as I put my banner in, my banner is going to span all 4 columns. And this is going to really help when you begin to code out your website. We're going to talk about something called CSS grid, which would be extremely helpful. All right, again, I don't want this video to become too long here, but I just wanted to at least show you how we'll get started with actually doing lab number 2. So do your best to replicate the Brookfield Zoo website. And again, you're going to be basically recreating this whole site as a high fidelity wireframe just to get some practice with the tool. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I can and I'll reply back here and give you some guidance. All right. The last two bullet points here is that you're going to provide a recommendation for this number 2 here. Provide a recommendation for how to perform the site, how to enhance the site, the speed of the site's performance, and that's going to go back to accessibility. The slides on accessibility. There's a tool called Google Page Speed tool. So run the Brookfield Zoo through that particular tool, and then give 2 recommendations. And then this last one here is what are the 2 things you can do to improve on accessibility, and you can use the Wave tool to do that. So there's this Wave accessibility tool. I would say go ahead and run the Brookfield Zoo through the Wave accessibility tool, and then look at 2 recommendations and give me 2 recommendations that you can implement to improve the accessibility of the Brookfield Zoo website. All right, so that's lab 2. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. But that concludes the intro to UX video series. Have a good one.